few questions here with little Barrie.
Good afternoon.
Oliver Buckle Wright on Twitter wants to know who you think the best rock star ever is.
God, that's a tough one. You know, sometimes I think of people. I guess one of my favourites always be Jimi Hendrix. You know, because I think he had it all really. You know, as a sort of charisma and sort of stage presence and stuff. But I don't know. There's so many people like Iggy Pop. Well, that's a real tough one. I suppose I'll have to keep it down to two, otherwise I'll go on forever.
Also, he wants to know, have you got any funny memories, a specific moment on tour that sticks out?
Probably quite a few, but it's probably some that I don't know what to say. But I suppose one falling over on stage in front of 6,000 people is quite a good one. That was quite spectacular.
Can I ask when that happened? Or?
It was some kind of BBC radio thing in Dundee. Hadn't been in the band very long with Scream, and I bought these really cool old 1940s shoes from a vintage clothing shop in Newcastle, but neglected to notice that the soles were quite shiny, so that was quite interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Also, he's got a few here. What's your most influential album?
I'd have to say the Stone Roses' first album, because my older sister was a really big influence on me, because she was at the age of going to college and or being into bands and going to a lot of gigs, and she just started buying lots and lots of records, and that record really stood out. That sort of made me, sort of stand up and listen really when I was still sort of mooching about in a Nottingham Forest tracksuit, and I heard that record and got really, really into it, and I loved it, and I just thought the songs were brilliant, and I thought they were an amazing band, and that was probably the biggest influence on me getting into music really. That and Chuck Berry. I've seen a Chuck Berry concert on TV, but the difference was that was the album and that was happening at the time. So.
Cool. Also, do you have any favourite current bands at the moment?
Sound Carriers are one of my favourite bands. There's a band that opened for the Scream recently called Toy, who I thought were really, really good. Didn't know anything about them, but I thought they were brilliant live. Good guys as well. Who else? Lots of bands really. As bands go, I think like Charles Bradley and his band are incredible. I know those guys will do other projects and stuff like that, but as a band that's around now, yeah. I thought they were fantastic.
There's been quite a few people have asked about gigs and dates in different countries. Obviously can't name them all, but have you got any plans that there's people say asking about Belgium, Scotland, Australia, especially going to Australia, going back to Japan at the end of the year?
We'd love to do all these places. There's some places we haven't played for ages, and they've all been brilliant places to play. I'd love to play in Scotland again. I suppose that's the nearest one, but also Belgium, Japan. I think what we're going to do, we will do some more gigs, but what we'd like to do is try and get some new music out before we do some more gigs. But I still think we will do some. But there's nothing confirmed yet. But if people just keep an eye on us, we'd love to be playing more. But we have got our heads in the studio a little bit.
Cool. Question from Twitter, from @MissingCoco. She says that you're her guitar hero, but wants to know who yours is. Is it still Chuck Berry, or does it change from day to day?
Chuck Berry's one of them. I've got so many guitar heroes. I think there's been so many brilliant, guitar players over the last 80 years or something. Chuck Berry will always be one of my faves, as will other obvious people like Jimi Hendrix, or the really obvious ones. Sometimes those ones are obvious for a reason. But there's other people I love just as much. When I started playing guitar, it would have been, I guess, a lot of them all began with J. My favourites were John Squire, Johnny Marr, Jay Mascis, Jimi Hendrix. They were a lot of my favourites. Ray Hansen from The Hypnotics was an incredible guitar player. you know, there's lots of other guys through those bands that I learned about that I really love. You know, whether it be Ron Ashton or Neil Young, or you know, and then but going through to people like Kevin Shields. Well, there's so many. Tommy Brennick from Charles Bradley's band is probably one of my favourite guitar players around now. I think he's phenomenal. He's an incredible guitar player. So yeah, there's hundreds really, too many to mention. You know, everything from Michael Corelli from Can to Skip James to I don't know, James Burton. You know, I like. There's so many people that I like.
Yeah. Monica Franceschi. It's got 2 questions. First one is, where do you get your source of inspiration? Or what's your greatest source of inspiration when you're writing a song?
To be honest, I think inspiration can come from a sort of variety of sources, really. You know, sometimes some of your inspiration comes from sounds and ideas that you've got. Other things come from maybe things you've thought about in terms of what you're writing about. But also, you know, I get a lot of influence off the people that I've, you know, played with, and a lot of the people that I've, you know, concerts that I've been to. So, you know, I think Virgil and Lewis definitely influenced me a lot, as does playing with Bobby and Andrew and Darren and everyone, you know. And also seeing how people work in the studio, you know. That's one cool thing about doing other things, is that it sometimes gives you a fresh approach to your own projects as well, because people work in different ways. It's quite interesting, you know. I think Edwyn Collins has been one of the biggest influences on our career, you know, in terms of a career, because without him I don't think I'd be doing any of this stuff, you know. I don't think I'd be with the Primal Scream now. I don't think I would have done all the touring, because we wouldn't have got records out. So.
Cool. Our second one is, if you're asked to write a soundtrack, is there any director you would like to sort of write the soundtrack for?
I'd love to work with a probably pretty unknown director called Lee Vincent Grubb, who's a good friend of ours, who did all the artwork for King of the Waves and directed the 2 videos and filmed the footage for the 3rd video. I just think he's really talented, and I think we're kind of on a good wavelength, really. In terms of known directors, I put my hands up and say my knowledge of film is pretty slight. So I don't know, you know. I'm a little bit out of my field there, but the thought of putting music to a movie is really different to the idea of writing albums, because you're out the sort of general constraints of songwriting, or what I see as sort of things of songwriting, you know.
Well, can I ask, I mean, do you think, like, can you imagine what your films